Half-past paper, week 19 for the foundation tier, and this is a non-calculator paper, back to a non-calculator this week, all the odd numbers this week, and then we'll do all the even numbers of this paper next week. These are all the topics that we're going to look at, and this is 41 marks, so roughly half a past paper. Okay, question number 1, write 3 out of 10 as a percentage. Now, percentage means out of 100. Percentage means out of 100, so if I've got 3 over 10, I would like to make it out of 100. And whatever you do to the bottom, you also need to do the same to the top to keep that fraction equivalent. So I've times the bottom by 10, I also need to times the top by 10, and that is 30 out of 100, so that is 30%. Question number 3, write 9 over 100 as a decimal. Well, that's 9 hundredths, and 9 hundredths is a 9 in the hundredths column, which is 0.09. This is your tenths column, and this is your hundredths column. The other way to think of it is as 9 divided by 100. And if we have 9 and we divide it by 100, it would move 2 columns over to the right. So 0.09 is the answer that we're looking for there. Question number 5, write down the value of 7 squared. Now 7 squared, we know when we square a number, we're not timesing it by 2, we're timesing it by itself. So 7 times 7 is 49. Question number 7, £42 is shared equally between 3 friends. How much does each friend get? So 42 divided by 3, let's use our bus stop method. 42 goes here and 3 on the outside. How many 3's go into 4? That fits in 1 whole time with 1 left over. How many 3's go into 12? That fits in 4 times. So £14 is your answer that each friend is getting. Question number 9. Danny buys 1 loaf of bread for £1.20, 1 bottle of milk for 70p, and 2 packets of cheese for £2.30 each packet. Danny pays with a £10 note. He says, I should get £3.30 change. Is Danny correct? You must show how you get your answer. So if he's buying a loaf of bread, that's £1.20, and he's also buying a bottle of milk, that's 70p, and he's also buying 2 packets of cheese, £2.30 each packet. So you could add on £2.30 and another £2.30, but I'm just going to do £2.30 doubled is £4.60, and then we can add that on as well. Adding all of that together, 0 add 0 add 0 is 0. 2 add 7 add 6. 2 add 7 is 9, add the 6 is 15, so 5 carry the 1. And 1 add 4 add 1 is 6. So the total cost of his shopping is £6.50. We're then going to take that away from £10. Now you might feel happy doing that in your head. £10 take away £6.50 is going to be £3.50. But let's just look at the written method of doing that. If you have £10 and you take away £6.50, 0 take 0 is 0. Now when it comes to this column, if I'm doing 0 take away 5, I've got more on the floor. I need to borrow from next door. So I'm going to change this 10 to be 9 and make this 10. 10 take 5 is 5, and 9 take 6 is 3. So either way, we get £3.50. Now they've asked us a question, so it's going to be worth a mark to answer their question. Is Danny correct? No. He gets £3.50, not £3.30, but that's absolutely fine. The fact that we can see that there and see that there is enough to get the mark with the word no. Question number 11. The pictogram shows information about the number of video games sold in a shop. How many video games were sold on Monday? So having a little look over here at the key, we can see that that represents 8 video games. So if we know that a block like this represents 8, then it might be helpful to think about the fact that each of those quarters represents 2 video games. So if I divide 8 by 4, I get 2. So therefore this is 8 and this is 8. So on Monday, 16 video games were sold. More video games were sold on Tuesday than on Wednesday. How many more? Well, let's work both of these out. On a Tuesday, we have 8, add 8, and this is 2, 2 and 2, so that's another 6. 8 add 6 is 22. So we have 16 on Monday, 22 on Tuesday, and then on Wednesday we have 8 and 2, so that's just going to be 10. How many more were sold on Tuesday than on Wednesday? So we're going to do 22, take away 10, and that is 12. On Thursday and Friday, a total of 32 video games were sold in the shop. A quarter of these were sold on Thursday. So to find a quarter of 32, we're going to do 32 divided by 4. Remember, if you want a fraction of a number, you divide by the bottom, and then whatever that answer is, times it by the top. But because the top is 1, it's just going to stay the same. So 32 divided by 4 is 8. So we know that on Thursday, 8 were sold. Complete the pictogram for Thursday and Friday. So we know it's 8 on Thursday, and that looks like this. And then on Friday, we need to do the rest. 32, take away 8 is 24. So there must be 8 on this day and 24 on the Friday to add them together to make 32. To draw 24, I just need 8, 16, 24. So 3 of those boxes would add up to 24. Great. Question number 13. A number sequence starts 1, 2, 4. Emma says that the next term is 7. Explain why Emma may be correct. So with this at the minute, we've gone 1 to 2 to 4. Now, how could we get that? It might be a different rule. It might be that we're doubling each time. So 1 to 2 to 4, but that would make the next one 8. It might be that we're adding 1 and then adding 2 and then adding 3. Now that would work, wouldn't it? Add 1, add 2, add 3. So explain why Emma may be correct if the sequence adds 1 more each time. For example, add 1, add 2, add 3, ... to get to the next term. Here are the first 4 terms of a sequence of triangle numbers. We've got 1 and then 3 and then 6 and then 10. So triangle numbers, I like to think about bowling. You've got 1 pin there, and then you have 3 pins, and then you have 6 pins, and then you have 10 pins like that. Find the 8th term of the sequence. So we could just keep drawing pins like that, but also you can see that we add 2, we add 3, we add 4. So to get to the next one, we're going to add 5 and so on. So it'll go 1, 3, 6, 10. Then we're going to add 5 to get to the next one, which is 15. And then we're going to add 6, and that would be 21. And then we're going to add 7, and that would be 28. And then we're going to add 8, and that would be 36. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The 8th term of the sequence would be 36. Question number 15. Expand 2 lots of A add D. Now when we expand brackets, we take what's on the outside and we multiply it by each term inside the bracket. So I'm going to do 2 lots of A and 2 lots of D, and that would be 2A add 2D. That's your answer for that one. Factorise. Now factorise means put into brackets. So when you see the word factorise, you know you need to be putting this into brackets. Have they got something in common? Yes, they do. They both have a y in common. So we can take that out as a common factor and put that outside the front of the bracket. And now we need to work backwards. What would we need to multiply by y to get 6y squared? So I know I'd need to times it by 6, but that would just get me 6y. If I want 6y squared, I'm getting a y times another y, so there must be a y here, so that we end up doing y times y and getting that y squared. Take away, and then it's going to be y times something to make 5y, so there must be a 5 here. So to factorise means to put into brackets, and the answer is y, 6y minus 5. If there's more things that you can take outside, you always want to take the most outside the bracket that you can. But that you can only take a y on that one. Okay, solve an equation. Now, if you've watched many of my videos before, you'd know I like to do a dotted line where the equals is. And what we do to one side, we're going to do to the other. So the first thing I'm going to do is add 7 to both sides. And that means that 4x equals 44. The next thing I'm going to do is divide both sides by 4. 4 lots of x is 44. The aim of solving is that you always just want one lot of x. You want x to be on its own. So if I divide the left-hand side by 4, that's what we get. But I also need to divide the other side by 4, because with equations, what we do to one side, we do to the other. And that gives an answer of 11. So x equals 11 is our answer. Question number 17. Heidi wants to make some biscuits using this recipe. Makes 12 biscuits, 125 grams of butter, 200 grams of flour, 50 grams of sugar. Heidi thinks that she has 500 grams of butter, 700 grams of flour, and 250 grams of sugar. Assuming that these weights are correct, work out the greatest number of biscuits Heidi can make. Okay, so she can make 12 biscuits with these ingredients. Now, there's a couple of different ways we can do this, but remember, we haven't got a calculator. So a lot of you might want to divide by 12 and work out how much you would need per biscuit. But I don't think that's going to be the best way here. I think the best way to do this is going to be to divide what she has by the recipe. So 500 divided by 125. Now, that's quite tricky. I'm going to do it as a fraction, so we can see how many 125s go into 500. Well, 125 doubled is 250, and then another 125 is 375, and another 125 is 500. So with the 500 grams of butter, that means that she can times 125 by 4 to get that. So she has enough butter to do the recipe 4 times. So butter, 4 times recipe, which means she's got enough butter to make 48 biscuits, because the recipe makes 12. If we times that by 4, that makes 48 biscuits. Okay, now let's look at the flour. 700 divided by 200. 700 divided by 200 is the same as 7 divided by 2, which is 3.5. So she's got enough flour to do the recipe 3.5 times. And 3.5 times the recipe is 3.5 lots of 12. So 3.5 times 12, one lot of 12 is 12, another lot of 12 is 24, a third lot is 36, and then half a lot of 12 is an extra 6. So 3.5 lots is 42. So she's got enough flour to make 42 biscuits. And then for the sugar, she has 250 grams and she needs 50 grams per recipe. So for sugar, we've got 250 divided by 50, which is 5. So we can times the recipe by 5. For sugar, and 5 lots of 12 is 60. So she's got enough sugar to make 60, she's got enough flour to make 42, and she's got enough butter to make 48. Now we can't make 60 because we don't have enough flour or butter, and we can't make 48 because we don't have enough flour. So we actually need to look at the smallest number here, and that's going to be the flour tells us we can make 42, so we've got enough of all 3 ingredients to make 42 biscuits. So 42 biscuits would be your answer there. Heidi is wrong. She has more than 250 grams of sugar. Does this affect the greatest number of biscuits Heidi can make? Give a reason for your answer. It doesn't change our answer, does it? Because it was the flour that was limiting us. The flour was what was making us have to go for 42. We had extra sugar anyway. So even more sugar isn't going to change our answer. So does this affect the greatest number of biscuits Heidi can make? No. We had extra sugar anyway. We'd need more flour to make more. Flour was our limiting factor. That was what was stopping us making any more. Okay, question number 19. Robin buys a watch for £80 and he sells the watch for £56. Work out his percentage loss. So percentage change, whether it's profit or loss, is the change over the original times by 100. So what's it changed by? From 80 to 56. 80, take away 56, more on the floor, borrow from next door, 10 take 6 is 4. That's gone down by £24. So the change is 24 over the original, which is 80, times by 100 because we want it as a percentage. Now I can simplify this fraction. They're both in the 8 times table. So that's 3 if I divide the top by 8 over 10 if I divide the bottom by 8. So 3 over 10 times 100. And 3 over 10 is 0.3 times by 100. That is 30% loss. Question number 21. This squiggly E means our universal set. So the universal set, all the numbers you know about in the universe, your universe right now, are the even numbers less than 19. So I'm going to write them out. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16 and 18. Less than 19 wouldn't include 19 anyway, but we're only looking at even numbers, so we're going to go up to 18. A is 6, 12 and 18, and B is 2, 6, 14 and 18. Complete the Venn diagram. So the bit you always want to do first is your intersection, this bit in the middle here, and in there we can put a 6 and we can put an 18 because both A and B have those values. We're then left with 12 in A and 2 and 14 in set B. Now we can't forget about all of the other numbers in the universal set because this box needs to have all of those numbers in it. So let's just work through. We've got 2, 4, 6 we've got, 8 we need, 10, 12, 14, 16 and 18 is there. So those 4 numbers that weren't in A or B need to go on the outside. Now sometimes they ask you for the probability of picking a number from A intersection B. If that was the question, we're talking about picking a number from this middle part here, and there are 2 numbers there out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 all together. If they asked you the probability of picking a number from A union B, that means anything in A or B. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers there out of 9. So those are really common questions that they like to ask you normally as a part B. They didn't today, but be wary of those. This is the intersection, just the bit in the middle, and this is the union, which means you can take numbers from either of the 2 circles, including the bit in the middle. Okay, question number 23. At the end of 2017, the value of Tamara's house was 220,000 and the value of Raheem's house was 160,000. At the end of 2019, the value of Tamara's house had decreased by 20% and the value of Raheem's house had increased by 30%. At the end of 2019, whose house had the greater value? You must show how you get your answer. So if this was a calculator paper, if I wanted to decrease by 20%, I'd be timesing by 0.8 because I want 80%, so I would be just timesing by 0.8 to get that straight away. And again, with an increase of 30%, because you would want 130%, I'd be timesing by 1.3. But the problem with that is that we don't have a calculator for this paper. This is a non-calculator paper, so we're not going to do it that way. We're just going to find out what 20% is and take it off, and we're going to find out what 30% is and add it on. So 10%, to get 10%, we always divide the value by 10 if we're starting on 100%, which we are here. So at the end of 2017, for Tamara, let's do Tamara on the left and let's do Raheem over here. So Tamara's house was 220,000. Now 10% of that would be 22,000 and we need 20% for Tamara. So we're going to double that. 20% would be 44,000. Now her house has decreased by 44,000. So we're going to do £220,000 take away 44,000. Now 0, 0, 0, 0 take 4, I can't take away. If there's more on the floor, you need to borrow from next door. 10 take 4 is 6. 1 take 4, again I'm going to borrow from next door. 11 take 4 is 7. And 1 take 0 is 1. So Tamara's house in 2019 is now worth 176,000. Let's now look at Raheem. So he had his house worth £160,000. And we know that 10% of that is 16,000 because we're dividing by 10. So 30% is going to be 3 times bigger. Now 16 times 3 is 48. 3 times 6 is 18, carry the 1. 3 times 1 is 3, add the 1 is 4. So this is going to be 48,000. And his isn't going down by 48,000, it's actually increasing, going up by 48,000. So I'm going to add that on to his starting value, 160,000, add 48,000. 0, 0, 0, 8, 10 and 2. So there we go. At the end of 2019, Raheem's house is now worth 208,000 and Tamara's house is worth 176,000. We need to answer their question, whose house had the greater value? And that was Raheem. And we can see that in the values there. Okay, question number 25. The diagram shows a prism. The cross-section of the prism is a right-angled triangle. Now the cross-section is what we call that shape that you see all the way through a prism. So if I was to slice it here, if I was to slice it here, you'd get that same shape the whole way through. The base of the triangle is 5, and we can see that the shape is 25 long in this direction. Now the prism has a volume of 750. To get the volume of a prism, it is the area of that cross-section multiplied by how far back it goes. And they're telling us the answer to that is 750. So I know that the area of that triangle, times by 25 equals 750. So let's work backwards here. And I'm going to start by doing 750 divided by 25. Now, if you get a division and you don't like it, or it's quite big numbers, I would always write it as a fraction, and then you can just simplify the fraction. So both of these things are divisible by 5. So if I divide by 5, I get 5 on the bottom. 750 divided by 5 is 150. And then 150 divided by 5 is 30. So we now know that the area of that triangle has to be 30 centimetres squared. Now on the picture we're shown that this is 5 centimetres. And we don't know the height, that's what we're trying to work out. And we know that the area of this is 30. Now remember, for a triangle we do base times height, but we divide it by 2 to equal 30, which means that the base times height must be 60. So what would we need to multiply with 5 to give 60? It would need to be 5 times 12. 60 divided by 5 is 12. So 12 times 5 would be 60, which then when you divide by 2 gives the area of 30. So 12 is the answer that you were looking for there for that one. If you put 6, it's because you forgot that when we work out the area of the triangle, we have to divide by 2. Okay, question number 27. Freddie measured the length of a pencil as 7.2, correct to 1 decimal place. So he's rounded to the nearest 0.1. Complete the error interval for the length of the pencil. So what's the smallest it could be and what's the biggest it could be? Now he's rounded to the nearest 7.2. The next number he could have rounded to was 7.3, 7.1 would have gone below, 7.4, 7.0. He could have rounded to any of these numbers, but he didn't. So we know that the smallest and the biggest it could have been must be in this section here. Otherwise, if it was any smaller, it would have rounded down to 7.1. And if it was any bigger, it would have gone up to 7.3. So what's in between 7.1 and 7.2? It's going to be 7.15. That's the smallest. And then we also just say 7.25. Now I know technically that would round up, and that's why we don't have the equal to bit here. It can't actually equal that value, but we can go right up to that value. So that's why we put 5 below and 5 above as our answer there. Fabulous. That's the end of that paper. So that was 41 marks, if I remember correctly, for that one today. All of the odd numbers, and remember all the even numbers will be on next week's paper, week 20, which should come out in about a week or so. So that was foundation tier, non-calculator paper. If you have any comments about any of the questions at all, please just drop me so if you have any questions, drop me a comment below, and I'd be more than happy to help you guys. See you next week for week 20.